Our scripture reading comes to us this morning from the Gospel according to John, the 11th chapter, beginning with the 17th verse. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. And many of the Jews had come to Mary and Martha to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will arise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. He cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Some people are very good when it comes to making you feel guilty. Do you know anyone like that? It could be an elderly mother who asks, "Why can't I come and live with you? I don't want to go to a nursing home. After everything I did for you when you were growing up, the least you can do is let me come and live with you now." Or it could be a high school coach who asks, "Is that the best you can do? You're not trying hard enough. Do you want to be a slacker for the rest of your life?" Or it could be a friend who says, "I know I messed up, but if you really were my friend, you'd forget about taking your kids to the circus so you can come and help me." It's called a guilt trip. And it usually works on people who tend to feel guilty when it comes to just about everything under the sun. Of course, some people have just the opposite problem. They never seem to feel guilty about anything. Take, for example, the 2 teenagers who were arrested after they were caught spraying graffiti on the side of a building. When they got to the police station, the arresting officer tried unsuccessfully to reach their parents. So he informed the teenagers that they were entitled to make a phone call. A little while later, a man walked into the police station and asked for the boys by name. The officer nodded his head and said, "You must be their lawyer." "No," the man said, "I'm just here to deliver the pizza they ordered." As a pastor, I've discovered over the years that guilt is a big problem for a lot of people. That's why it's important to make a distinction between good guilt and bad guilt. If you're wondering what the difference is between good and bad guilt, is, just look at what happens to Jesus when he finally arrives in Bethany. Shortly after he gets there, Martha comes up to him and says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Does that sound like a guilt trip to you? It sure sounds like a guilt trip to me. A little while later, Mary walks up to Jesus and says the same thing. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Then, just to make sure that the message is reinforced, some of the people in the crowd shake their heads and ask, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?" Put it all together and the message is clear. Jesus, this is all your fault. Now, it's true that when Jesus hears that Lazarus is ill, he waits 2 days before starting out for Bethany. But there's a good reason why Jesus waits 2 days before starting his journey. First of all, Jesus knew that no matter what he did, Lazarus was going to die before he got to Bethany. So Jesus waited 2 days because of a superstition that people had back then when it came to death and dying. Back then, people believed that after you died, your soul stayed with the body for 3 days, and you weren't completely dead until the soul left the body. That's why Jesus did what he did. That's why Jesus waited 2 days before leaving for Bethany. He waited 2 days before leaving for Bethany so that when he finally gets to Bethany, Lazarus is already in the tomb 4 days. Jesus does that because he wants everyone to know that Lazarus really was dead and that his resurrection really was a miracle. So Martha and Mary and all the people in the crowd throw that guilt at him because they don't see the whole picture. They don't fully understand what's going on. So the guilt that they throw at Jesus is bad guilt. Bad guilt is when someone uses it to manipulate you so you do what they want you to do. Bad guilt is when you can't forgive yourself for something that happened years ago. Bad guilt is when your mother goes into a nursing home and you beat yourself up because of it, even though she needs medical care that you can't give her. Bad guilt is when you get a B+ on an exam and you make yourself miserable because it wasn't an A. If you want to know what bad guilt can do to you, just look at Charlie Brown. In the movie Snoopy Come Home, Charlie Brown and Linus are standing on a beach. When Charlie Brown picks up a rock and throws it into the ocean, Linus says, "Nice going, Charlie Brown. It took that rock 4,000 years to make it to shore, and now you've gone and thrown it back in." When Charlie Brown hears that, his shoulders slump, and he moans, "Everything I do makes me feel guilty." Bad guilt drags you down. It puts you in a prison where you feel empty and inadequate. Father W. Paul Jones tells a story about a woman who knew all about what bad guilt can do for you. When the woman was a little girl, she was crippled by polio. She knew she was different, and it really did a number on her. So she told Father Jones this story. In her own words, she said, "When my mother left me in Sunday school, I always asked to wear her locket. She thought it was because I liked the locket, but that wasn't it at all. I knew that I wasn't worth coming back for, but I knew that she would come back for her locket." Bad guilt drags you down. Good guilt, on the other hand, lifts you up. Good guilt leads you to forgiveness and reconciliation. It leads you to God's grace and goodness. Good guilt helps you to let go of the past, and it opens a door to a future where you can be the wonderful person that God created you to be. Jesus knew that, which is why he did what he did when the people threw all of that guilt at him. After all, Jesus could have bought into the guilt and apologized to everyone, but he didn't. Jesus could have given everyone a taste of their own medicine and accused them of being fair-weather friends who didn't deserve his help. But he didn't. Or Jesus could have simply turned around and walked away, but he didn't. Instead of getting caught up in all of the guilt and throwing a little more guilt back at them, what Jesus did instead was he led them to God's grace and goodness. He gave them a glimpse of God's grace and goodness. You see it when he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. They who believe in me, though they are dead, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." You see it when Jesus stands there and weeps. You see it when he looks into the tomb and says in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." Good guilt leads you to God's grace and goodness. Good guilt leads to forgiveness and reconciliation. Good guilt helps you let go of the past, and it opens a door to a future where you can be the wonderful person God created you to be. That's what happened to a man who turned his life around in a way that surprised his family and friends. He went from being an alcoholic who couldn't hold down a job to being a hard-working man who was a devoted father and husband. When someone asked him about the turnaround, he shared with the person a deep, dark secret. He talked about his high school fraternity and how one of their initiation rituals went horribly wrong. It seems that they took some pledges out into the country and made them stand in the middle of a dark, lonely road. Then the man got into his car and drove at them as fast as he could go. The pledges were told that they couldn't move until someone along the side of the road gave them a signal to jump out of the way. When the signal was given, they all jumped out of the way except for one. Shortly after that, the man left college. He eventually got married and had two children, but the image of that boy's face as he was hit with his car continued to haunt him. He became an alcoholic, and his story continues with his own words. "My wife had to work to bring in the only income we had. I was drinking at home one morning when someone rang the doorbell. I opened it to find myself facing a woman who seemed strangely familiar. She sat down in our living room and told me that she was the mother of the boy I had killed years before. She said that she had hated me and spent agonizing nights rehearsing ways to get revenge. I then listened as she told me of the love and forgiveness that had come to her when she gave her heart to Christ. She said, 'I've come to let you know that I forgive you, and I want you to forgive me.' I looked into her eyes that morning, and I saw deep in her eyes the permission to be the kind of man I might have been had I never killed that boy. That forgiveness changed my whole life." The next time you're feeling a little guilty, ask yourself this question: is this good guilt or bad guilt? Long ago in Bethany, Jesus told Lazarus to come out of that dark and lonely tomb. He then told the people there to unbind him and let him go. Right now, Jesus is saying the same thing to anyone here this morning who may be living in a lonely tomb that's full of dark guilt that drags you down. Come out. Come out. Unbind yourself and go in peace. Amen.